but Bergeron, like there's a guy that can play a game and have zeros right across the board and be the most effective player. That's where a guy like Bucci, we need to see if he can get to, which is being a dominant player when the puck's not going for you. And that's a mindset. That's willing to go from potentially an 85-point player to a 70-point player and see that being a good thing, not a bad thing. And that's a maturity level, and that's where I think Bucci is at now, and I think he's excited about that. Whether it's at the middle of the ice or the wing, a lot will be predicated on what we do, and certainly I got to sit with the coach and get his vision of how it works out.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, it's good to be back in with you here on BK and Ferrario. That voice you just heard was Doug Armstrong heading into the offseason, talking about Pavel Buchnevich as a potential centerman for the St. Louis Blues. And Alex, that is what we are expecting to see tonight. The Blues have made some significant changes to the lineup. They've got Jake Neighbors on the top line, continuing his trend of being with Robert Thomas. They have reunited, though, Robert Thomas with Jordan Kyrou. So it'll be Neighbors, Thomas, Kyrou as your top line. That's where things get weird. Saad, Buchnevich, and Kapanen. Hayes, Shin, and Sonny is your third line. Three guys that have previously played center for the Blues, all going to be on the same line together. And then your fourth line heading into tonight is expected to be Torpchenko, McGing, and Blais. So that's where we're at right now. Alex, I can't believe we're back here. I cannot believe it. One of the top priorities for the Blues in the offseason was we got to find a centerman because we can't do this thing with Pavel Buchnevich long term. That can't be our real answer at center. Well, they did it. They went out, they got Kevin Hayes, they got Oscar Sundqvist. Both of those players are playing in your top 9 tonight. You do not have significant injuries. None of your other centermen are hurt. And yet, despite all of those things I just said being true, we are back to Pavel Buchnevich playing center, despite his, 33% face-off percentage a year ago? I love Pavel Buchnevich. I think he's a really good player. I don't think he's a centerman long-term. I understand that they're just trying to find anything that will work for them right now. I don't love this, man. I'm not going to lie to you. It signals to me a lot of desperation with where the Blues are at today.
I mean, this signals to me that they're very unhappy with all of their wingers. I mean, Torpchenko is not a top 9 winger. We know that. Sammy Blais, the same can be said there. Oscar Sundqvist, they're trying to get the most out of. I think that's a sign to all of the wingers that nobody's really playing the responsible side of it. And they're trying to get 2 guys, Saad and Kapanen, going who haven't had the best few games, probably about a week. To me, this is less about Buchnevich and more about Jordan Kyrou. I think this is Craig Berube looking at Jordan Kyrou and saying, we need your offense, and we can't keep trying to make it work with Kevin Hayes or Braden Shen. It's not working right there. So we need you to go play with Robert Thomas and be the $8 million guy that you are. Buchnevich at center, it wasn't pretty on the faceoff dot. He at least created offense last season. He played a lot with Vrana and Kapanen, some with Blais and Kapanen. So I think you're doing this because you need some responsibility down the middle, and Hayes has been working well with Shen. This, to me, signals more of their problems with the wing, which coming into the season, we thought this was going to be it. You failed with Vrana. It hasn't worked with Kapanen. Saad has not been the guy you thought he was, and you need Kyrou to be the offense, so hence we got to move Buchnevich to center.
Yeah, I thought it was very telling when you saw this that it was just kind of the red alarm bells going off as like they sense that this is starting to get away from them this year.
Starting?
All right, has gotten away from them this year.
The train was on the tracks, and then the tracks were removed from being in front of the train, and we are now all the way into the wilderness, man. We are like a month, 30, 40, how many games have we played at this point?
27.
I've lost track.
Yeah,
27 games into the season, and Pavel Buchnevich is starting at center again. 27 games? That's all it took? Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
I don't think it's that. I think it's...
You don't think this is alarming?
No, I don't. I think it's more alarming for the wingers than anything.
They have 3 centers on the same line.
Exactly, but you know that Buchnevich has worked with Thomas and Neighbors. You need Jordan Kyrou to start producing offensively.
So if it was only about Kyrou, then why isn't Buchnevich playing winger?
Because Hayes and Shen have not worked as the second-line center.
Correct. So it's not just about Kyrou. It's also about the centers that you've added that are here long-term that also can't be top 6 forwards.
But Hayes was never supposed to be a top 6 forward for you.
Well, Shen
Nor
was.
was Braden Shen.
Then who was? If it wasn't one of those two, then what was the plan?
Welcome to you're still searching for that. I don't think. I mean, Shen was supposed to be the second line wing or center for you, and that has not worked at all. But
That's
Shen
a
has.
problem. He's
Shen
on
has
contracts for like 4 years.
Again,
man.
this is more about the wingers than the centermen. Shen has played with Saad, he's played with Kapanen, he's played with Kyrou, and nobody is producing.
I cannot agree with that. If it was
That's
just
fine, but this is what it's been. Shen has not worked with the wingers he's played with. And Hayes has been on the third line, and that hasn't really worked. They've worked together, but now you need somebody else who can start bringing the best out of these wingers, and that's what they're trying to accomplish with Buch.
It is what it is. I understand why they're doing this. I'm not blaming Craig Berube. I'm not saying he's wrong for doing so. Man, put all of the names into a hat and draw them, and in the order that you select them, play them in that spot in the order.
Is Vrana going to be in the header now?
He's off to the side. He's ineligible to be plucked out of this hat, unfortunately.
I don't
for
even
him.
think he was at the arena today.
But he wasn't. That is less my problem. The problem is the immediacy and the long term of it. You have guys on your roster right now, Kevin Hayes specifically, that was brought in to be a center. He was brought here because the plan was, the stated goal from day one of the offseason, we need a middle six center. Not middle six forward, a middle six center. And he's now been playing wing almost exclusively for a hot minute now. That's not good, man. That does not speak highly to the move that you made in the offseason to bring Kevin Hayes in. Now, he's not been a total failure. Like, he's played mostly fine. He's played like a $3.5 million forward. But he wasn't supposed to be brought in to be a $3.5 million forward. He was brought in to be a $3.5 million center. And instead of him playing center, instead of Sonny playing center, they are now going back to the guy that last year they tried this out for the final month or two of the season and decided, based on what they saw from him, our number one priority has to be going out and finding a new center so that way we don't have to play this guy there any longer. So, yeah, I think it is red alarm bells. I think it is highly, highly concerning that their guys that they wanted to play that position are no longer playing there any longer. And that, to me, is a really big deal that we are already there less than 30 games into the season.
Yeah.
I think your coach has thrown his hands up and said, we've got to figure something out for our middle six because it's not even the offense as it's the defense. And defensively, the best line both games against Columbus and Chicago was Thomas Neighbors and Buchnevich. The second, third, fourth line were all defensive liabilities, causing odd man rushes the other way, no offense from it. You're throwing your hands up right now and saying, look, Berube goes in pairs, and he starts to pair people off and say who works well together. Shen and Hayes worked well together when they were playing with Jordan Kyrou. Thomas and Neighbors worked well together when they were playing with Buchnevich. Now we're trying to figure out what these other pairs are, and yeah, that is a problem. I think this is more a problem for these guys that you were hoping are going to be a part of the solution. Guys like Brandon Saad that you needed to be a top six winger and hasn't been that yet. Kapanen, who you claimed off of waivers and have not been that yet. And frankly, it says a lot about Blais and Toropchenko that both were given top 9 opportunities and none of them outplayed for the position over Oscar Sundqvist.
Yeah, I mean, both of them should have and always were expected to be fourth-line players. Asking them to be more, we said it from day one, man. Like, they're not top 9 forwards, and that's fine.
They can do it in a pinch, but they can't do it over 82 games.
They're not guys that you want in the top 9. Frankly, Oscar Sundqvist isn't a guy that I want in my top 9, but if he's got to do it, he's got to do it. It is what it is.
That was the McGing move that was surprising to me because Gaudette could have been the guy that's playing in that third line role, at least provide some offense, and then you could keep that fourth line together. But sure, they obviously like McGing for a fourth line centerman role.
Again, fine. I don't. None of this stuff really gets me all that hot and bothered for the immediacy. This year is what it is, and it's why I said a couple of weeks ago, I got roasted for it, but I said I don't have a lot of emotional connection to this team, and I couldn't figure out why. Because at the time, they were winning, which should have meant that I feel excited to watch them on a night in, night out basis, but I didn't. I had no connection to them, and then over the weekend, I saw why. I was reminded, oh, yeah, this is still the same team. Like, it's the same issues that we've been talking about. There's just... I enjoy watching this year Jordan Binnington when he's on. I think Jake Neighbors has been a super fun storyline for this team. But otherwise, like, it's just a whole lot of blah for me on a night in, night out basis to watch them. And what this lineup signifies to me is that the Blues kind of feel the same way about their team that I do. Like, they are looking at this and saying, what we did in the offseason has not worked. They feel about their center solutions the way that the Cardinals did about what they did in the rotation. Cardinals knew they needed pitching. They're like, we're going to bet on this stuff. We're going to hope that these spare parts, it's all going to work out for this. It didn't. It failed, and we knew very quickly that it had failed on them. Well, we have learned very quickly that what their plan was up the middle, which is a pretty big deal, failed. It failed. Now, what they did at wing also failed. They clearly didn't make it work, and I think it was more on Vrana than them, but it didn't work with Jakub Vrana. Kapanen, I think, has mostly been fine. I think he's been what you expected him to be, which is like a third-line winger, but you're asking him to be a top six winger. My biggest issue with the offseason builds is that you have guys up the middle that are on long-term contracts. It's not a one-year deal for Kevin Hayes. It's not a one-year deal for Braden Shin. It's not a one-year deal for Robert Thomas. And I think maybe you have one top six center among them. Maybe. And otherwise, you've got a bunch of guys that you expect to be on your third line for the foreseeable future. That, to me, is part of what this move signifies, and it is a concern long-term that that's the case for you, in my opinion. I understand if people disagree with that.
I'm with you on that, because this is, when you look at them, Shen needed to be the guy that was playing that second line center, at least until you could exit the retool and until like someone like a Dvorsky was ready to go that could play center potentially there. And in fact, now you have, I think we mentioned this yesterday, Alex, they have maybe 4 guys that belong into a top 6, and 3 of those guys are here in the long term. One of them is going to be a pending UFA at the end of next season. What do you do with him? And look, maybe they can go out and they can fix this all in free agency as the years go by in this retool, but they have a lot of guys underperforming, and that's not a good sign for guys that are on long-term contracts.
It wouldn't surprise me mid-game tonight if one of Shen or Hayes shifts up to that second-line centerman spot. I think they really are going to see if Buch can be better in the face-off dot, but I think right now you're at a point where you know Thomas's role, you know Neighbors' role, you know a Toropchenko and a Sammy Blais role, and then everything else is the muddied middle. And this is the hard part of the retool, to where you want roles defined immediately, and they probably thought those roles were defined. But I fall back into the camp of the centerman's role has been shifted dramatically because these wingers have not been what they were hoping for, and now you just got to start putting guys together to see if you could build any chemistry.
Yeah, I just wish that they would have found somebody to be that second line center. And if it wasn't going to be Kevin Hayes, if we were willing to kind of move on from that idea less than a month into the season, basically, then you probably weren't all that tied to it to begin with. And him being on a 3-year deal, it's not something that I necessarily would have been super excited about.
Decision
Ross
makes
Colton, good game last night, by the way. Good game for Ross Colton last night.
That decision makes Ryan O'Reilly decision look rough also, because O'Reilly, of course, has been looking really good for the Nashville Predators.
Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we're talking to Jeremy Rutherford. I want to pick his brain on this. What does he think about Pavel Buchnevich getting back to his center position here this early in the season? We'll talk to JR about it coming up in about 15 minutes or so. But coming up next, T-Bone thinks the Cardinals might have learned the wrong lessons about their bullpen. Why is that? We'll talk about it next here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friends over at Ted Drewes. Still an opportunity for you to get out there and finish your holiday shopping at the Ted Drewes gift shop across the parking lot from Ted Drewes' famous frozen custard, where those last people in your Christmas shopping list of things that you don't know what to buy for them, well, you can shop a unique variety of Ted Drewes apparel. You could get Ted Drewes souvenirs, or the perfect holiday gift, the Ted Drewes gift card. So you can go, or you can shop online, teddrewesgiftshop.com, and you can check all of those out. But while you're there, walk through their parking lot with all of their Christmas trees. You can also check out the finest tree greenery around, the Christmas wreaths, Christmas homemade bows that you can do. And, of course, you can also purchase the frozen custard and eat it while you're walking around enjoying the holiday season, or you could buy it in bulk and bring it home, freeze it, and have it for the holidays. Nothing better than Ted Drewes' famous frozen custard than building up those family traditions. Go check them out just off of Chippewa and find out why Ted Drewes really is good guys and gals.
I do like the back end. Obviously, we had injuries last year, which makes that a challenge. I think we had a couple guys adapting to the pitch clock too, so I think they'll be better situated as we look at 2024. But I wouldn't be surprised if we do a few things in the bullpen between now and spring training. So, certainly if we can add something to that, we think that would be smart.
That was Sean Mozela a couple of weeks ago talking about the Cardinals' plan to add in the bullpen. In 10 minutes, we'll be discussing the Blues situation at center with Jeremy Rutherford. Stay tuned for that with Alex and T-Bone. I'm BK. But I do want to get into this a little bit, Alex, because over the weekend, the Cardinals did make a move trading Tyler O'Neill to the Boston Red Sox. And in return, the real prize of this was Nick Robertson, a reliever from Boston that's coming here to St. Louis, and he's expected to be a part of the Cardinals' bullpen in 2024. And this continues the trend of how they've started out the offseason, adding to the pen. They add Ryan Fernandez. They add Nick Robertson. They add Riley O'Brien. If you've never heard of any of these players, I don't blame you. They're not household names by any stretch of the imagination. And those are the three pieces so far that the Cardinals have added to their bullpen for this upcoming year. They're all interesting in their own right. Ryan Fernandez had a cutter that had a 40% whiff rate last year. His four-seamer is averaging more than 96 miles per hour. It's the kind of profile that is compelling to find out what he can do for your bullpen. But there is very little certainty there. We have no idea if he's going to be good in the big leagues or not. Nick Robertson, 37% whiff rate last year on his changeup. Really nice. You like to see that. He's got a pitch that seems to work. The problem, it got crushed by lefties last year in the big leagues, and you have no idea if there's going to be any sort of consistency with that pitch. He also has 95th percentile extension, Alex, which might sound like some googly gop type of a stat. Basically, that means he's getting more extension on the ball, which means that even with his velocity, which is like 95 miles an hour, it looks even faster than that because of how far he is extending before he releases the baseball. So a little bit of something there. Riley O'Brien had the highest strikeout rate last year in the Pacific Coast League. Now, all of this is fun, exciting, interesting for somebody like me. That's a numbers nerd that looks at this and are like, okay, I kind of see how that can come together. But if you're a casual baseball fan, you're just a Cardinals fan, and you want to watch the team, you want to see them win, I don't know that this does a whole lot for you. So they still need to add to the bullpen. And T-Bone, you said something interesting before the show today. You said you think the Cardinals might be learning the wrong lessons from this past season about the pen. Why is that? Well,
I keep hearing in reporting from people that cover the Cardinals and do a great job, they keep saying, they're looking for depth in the pen. Look, they do need it. Last year, one of the issues they did have was they did have a lack of what would you call it? A carousel from AAA to the majors. They didn't have that group of guys that could bring up and down between AAA and the major leagues.
The Memphis shuttle didn't exist.
The Memphis shuttle didn't exist, and they've done a decent job of adding that so far with those names that you just said. Again, those are moves that don't win in offseason. Normally, these kind of moves don't win in offseason and aren't known, but they're talked about in September when you hear the story of, hey, well, they got this guy in the Rule 5 pick. Oh, really? I never heard of him until this year. Those are fine moves. But now they need to start getting the serious, we know what we're getting, and we're getting a back-end, lights-out bullpen arm, and they need two of them. They need to go into this offseason and finish this offseason by getting two guys that can slot right up there with the Giovanni Gallegos. And they don't have to be the big-name guys. They don't have to be the Josh Hader, Jordan Hicks types. There are guys in that $5 to $7 million range, like a Phil Maton, that fit into that conversation. What they don't need is the Chris Stratton type reliever, where they're going to say, well, this guy, this is him. He provides depth to the bullpen. He's got a rubber arm. He could throw 80 innings this year for us out of the bullpen. You don't need any of those guys. That's the lesson that I fear that they're going to go with was the bullpen had its issues last year, but that was because we didn't have any depth to the bullpen, even though they blew a crap ton of saves. I think they need to go out there and need to be getting guys that have legitimate stuff that can slot into the back portion of the bullpen, because I have serious questions about Giovanni Gallegos. I have serious questions about what JoJo Romero is going to bring this year. You need to get probably two relievers that slot into that, to where if Gio bounces back and JoJo is the guy that you saw in the second half, now you have that bullpen that can play not just in the regular season, but play in the postseason with five guys with swing and miss that can just come out of a bullpen, and I can go, oh, crap, here comes Phil Maton out of the pen. Oh, crap, here comes this reliever that's going to just shut things down. They need those kind of guys. They don't need the depth move, because I think they've got plenty of those guys right now.
I'm not even greedy to need two of them. Just give me one of them. And The name recognition, of course, would be great. I just want somebody who I can use in a save situation, because I have one guy right now that I trust in a save situation, and it's Ryan Helsley. I don't trust Gallegos, I don't trust JoJo, and I don't trust any of these other guys that you're trying to sell us on that they're going to be arms we can rely on. I think you've got depth. I like the swing and miss stuff for these guys that you've acquired. I think the upside is there in terms of somebody you can use in the middle innings, and you can get some swing and miss. You've got strikeout stuff. But you need to get, and for me, it's just one. You need to get one person that you look at and you say, if Helsley gets hurt, we go to him for saves. And I don't think you have that guy.
I think that's where I'm at, too. I would be okay with it just being one arm. And the reason why is because I think right now you have 4 players in your bullpen that are guaranteed to be on the roster, barring something unforeseen, for most of the season. Helsley, Gio, JoJo, and Fernandez. I think those are the 4 guys. The guys that I think are currently a part of the Memphis shuttle. These guys all have options available to them going into 2024. Palante, Thompson, King, Robertson, Liberator, Graceffo. Maybe you could throw some more of the young arms in there if you want to. We'll get into that conversation a little further here in a second. But those guys, that's 6 pitchers that I just mentioned for 3 spots in your bullpen, if you add one more free agency reliever. Because what happens when you add that guy via free agency is you cannot send him up and down in the Memphis shuttle. So that occupies one more of those spots. And T-Bone, you said you think that's a lesson they learned a little bit too much last year. I think they learned it the exact right amount. I don't want the entirety of the bullpen to be the Memphis shuttle, right? Then you have too little certainty at the back end of your pen. I do think you need 2 to 3 spots, though, that you can utilize that way. I think you need 6, 7, 8 different relievers that can occupy those spots on your roster, so that way you've always got a fresh arm to come in. If you have a game where starter goes 4 innings and you need Palante to go out there and give you 3. You need Thompson to go out there and give you 3. You need one of these other, maybe it's Graceffo, Liberator, whoever, go out there, give you 3. The next day, send him down. It sucks. It's the nature of the business, man. And it's something that this team last year, they were so depleted when it came to the spots that were available to them to send guys up and down. They almost had to keep that guy on the roster the next day. So now you're even lighter in your bullpen. So I think that they learned somewhat the right lesson there. Now becomes the question of, what do you go do with that spot that you can get the free agency arm? Are you going to get a Phil Maton? Are you going to get a Jordan Hicks? What is the kind of reliever that you're going to be targeting there? I kind of like the way that they've been attacking it so far. I like attacking it with numbers, but now you got to get the certainty. So far, you've added upside. Now you have to add somebody that you can fit into that 6th, 7th, 8th, really 7th, 8th, or 9th inning mix, and you feel very confident they're going to get the job done.
I think you in the bullpen. I think you get 8 guys in the bullpen if I remember correctly now. You need 4 guys that are really locked in on those contracts that you're talking about. And to me, that are the 4 high leverage relievers.
And that's Helsley, Gio, JoJo, and whoever they sign in free agency.
And to me, JoJo's not in that conversation.
Okay.
To me, it is
he doesn't
Helsley,
have options next year as part of the problem, though.
Again, he's going to have to come out and show it and prove it. And honestly, I'd be fine. To me, you should operate, especially with a bullpen arm, you should operate on, let's not plan on him being that guy. And maybe we have to try and do where maybe they end up having to trade him, or without options, try and send him through, see if nobody claims him, see if he can do that. He'd probably get picked up, though. Sure. But I would operate on the assumption that he's not that guy, him or Gio. And I know that Gio doesn't have options either. But I would lock into place 4 guys that are legitimate, just swing and miss stuff that I trust. And the reason I just don't trust JoJo is we're going off of a second half. I think the issue they had last year was, because you're right, they do need that Memphis shuttle. The issue they had last year was a lot of the guys that they had locked into place were those middle relievers, like Drew Verhagen, Chris Stratton. Those kind of roles should not be locked up. And my fear is that they're going to go into the offseason and they're not going to add 2 legitimate back-end arms, and they're going to operate with, let's bring back a Stratton. We need a guy that's going to provide depth into the bullpen. No, that's where the issue was last year was, yes, they had guys locked into place, but they had the wrong guys locked into place. They didn't have the option guys in the middle relief. They had the Strattons and Verhagens that were locked in, and then you really limit yourself in the back end of the bullpen. That's what I hope that they learned from this past year.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. If you guys want to get involved in the show, we'll get to some of your questions coming up in about 15 minutes or so for questions and answers. But coming up next, we're going out to the 101 ESPN hotline to be joined by Jeremy Rutherford. I've got some questions for him about how he views the team's move to put Pavel Buchnevich back at center. We'll ask JR about that coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Terry Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues back in action tonight as they host the Detroit Red Wings. And we'll have pregame coverage starting at 5:30 with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey will join Chris Gerber for Puck Drop at 6:30. And news out of the NFL, the LA Chargers are shutting down Justin Herbert for the season as he's going to undergo season-ending surgery on his broken finger. This Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff. Find your road shop 24/7 at londoff.com, londoffAutoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, let's go out to the 101 ESPN hotline to be joined by Jeremy Rutherford. He's the Blues insider at The Athletic. You can follow him on Twitter at JP Rutherford. He joins us here on the show each and every Tuesday. We always appreciate him doing so. JR, let's get right into this thing, man. Blues made some significant changes to their lineup heading into the game tonight. Looks like we are going to see Pavel Buchnevich back at center again. I believe this is the first time he started a game at center so far this year. What'd you make of the move?
Yeah, get your pencil out. If you're one who does a lineup card, you got a lot of changes to make tonight with this forward group. This is the first time that you'll see Pavel Buchnevich start a game at center this year. And in terms of what do I think about the move, I think the Blues had to do something. You lost 3 in a row, and you have a situation. What the goal against Chicago over the weekend was, your only goal was a shorthanded goal. The vaunted penalty kill continues to produce, but not this offense. And so you've got to do something here. And I think they wanted to get Thomas and Kyrou back together. It's been a while since they've played. You can't take Neighbors off that top line. It'll be interesting to watch those three. And then what do you have left? So they've decided to go back to Buchnevich at center. To me, you look at last year, Craig Berube referenced that today. If it would have worked last year, they would have came back with it at the start of this year. But to me, it didn't work. I don't know what I think about this line. Brandon Saad, Kasperi Kapanen on his wings, not doing much this season. Craig Berube did say that last year when Buchnevich played in the middle, he really set up his wingers for scoring opportunities, did a good job offensively with that. I just don't see these guys producing the way that the team had hoped. And so, yeah, you want to try to get them going, but I don't know that this is a recipe for this right now. And then also I think you need a little balance. Schenn hasn't had a great offensive season, but they're looking for a line there with Hayes, Schenn, and Sundqvist to do something on that third line and try to just get the scoring from anywhere at this point.
Is the retool starting to be threatened by the rebuild, JR?
Yeah, big picture for sure. I think that when they lose 3 in a row and look the way they have, and you start talking about, inner workings of the team, guys picking and choosing when they want to play, which is what Captain Braden Schenn said after the last game. You start to look at the situation and say, okay, can this team compete on a nightly basis with this lineup, especially when you look at this forward group that they're just trying to patch together to get some sort of offense and say, okay, where's it going to come from? Is this going to turn into a rebuild? So I know that we've kind of touched on that question at times throughout the season. Is it going to turn into a full rebuild? Yeah, I don't think we're there yet, but I think if we continue to see what we've seen the past 3 games, they're going to get to a point where, it's going to be wise to make decisions that are more based on the future than what we've seen.
What does it tell us about the current view of Kevin Hayes and Braden Schenn that Pavel Buchnevich is your second-line center right now?
Well, it's a good question, but I just think that it goes back to trying anything at this point. It necessarily hasn't worked the other way. They moved Hayes over. I think that you're getting what you're getting out of those guys at this point, and you can't keep trying the same thing. So, perhaps, what I expect to happen, not a lot of production out of that line based on the way they've played this season, talking about Saad and Kapanen being on the wings. Maybe it does trigger something. And maybe, like Berube said today, it does help to get these guys going. I mean, we've seen that throughout the years where it just takes a little finagling with the lines to get a guy going. So perhaps, they see something that this could work. I just think based on the results this season, it doesn't look very promising.
It seems, JR, that the wingers have not panned out the way that the Blues were hoping. I mean, you bring Vrana in, he doesn't pan out. You bring Kapanen in, he hasn't panned out. Saad hasn't lived up to those goal potentials that you're looking for. But with the Vrana news that took place yesterday, what have you learned from yesterday to today with that situation?
Yeah, with Vrana, we could hear in just a little while if he is going to be indeed placed on waivers. And you go back to yesterday, the information I got from the agent was that he was going to be placed on waivers because they got the phone call. Both Vrana and J.P. Barry of CAA got the information from the Blues that he was going to be placed on waivers. And what happens typically is if you don't see a guy go on waivers, that means there's continued discussions, whether it be trade talks with other teams or what have you. So did those trade talks lead to something materialize yesterday that could lead to a potential deal for Vrana? We'll find out. If not, he could be on the waiver wire, which we'll know at 1 o'clock. He did not have a locker stall at Enterprise Center today for the morning skate. He was not on the ice. I don't expect him to be back with the team. And I think that this is a situation they want to part ways with the player, and they'd like to make a deal or know that someone's going to pick him up from waivers, so you're not talking about a situation where you're sending him down to your AHL affiliate and putting your other players down there in a bad spot with a disgruntled player. So we'll see what happens with Vrana today, but always the potential for him to be on that waiver wire at 1 o'clock.
Jeremy Rutherford is our guest for just another couple of minutes here on 101 ESPN. You could read his work over at The Athletic, and be sure you're following him on Twitter as well, at JP Rutherford. Jared, what's the lesson to be learned from the disappointing year from Jakub Vrana? Is there a lesson to be learned?
I guess the lesson, if there was one, and again, I think all three of us have talked about the potential there, and there are reclamation projects throughout the league all the time. But if there's a lesson, perhaps it's, what went wrong in Washington and then specifically in Detroit. That wasn't just a situation where a player didn't fit that scene. And if you moved him, perhaps he could be a player for you. I think that what we've seen with Vrana in a Blues uniform, especially this year, last year you liked the offensive numbers, but as Craig Berube said himself yesterday, that was, nothing really to play for. You were coming in, putting up numbers, and it wasn't the same situation as the start of this year. This is a player that I don't know that you can count on. I don't think he has an awareness of how he can be better. I mean, he talks about the strengths in his game. He's a skater, he's a shooter. I think he just wants the coaches to automatically trust him that he can be that player and score goals for you, and then you're just going to overlook the defensive end. And, well, it's all fine and dandy, but if you're not scoring, and he wasn't, then how do you put that player out on the ice, especially when you look at the 3 or 4 glaring mistakes per game? So I think it's a situation, if there's a lesson, maybe you analyze it a little bit better, like, hey, do we really think if this is the third team for this guy, we can overlook some of the shortcomings that he's had as a player, and even some shortcomings, in your locker room.
Blues back in action tonight against the Detroit Red Wings. It does not sound like we are going to see David Perron in this one. Blues versus Detroit, though, coming up at 6:30. JR, before we get you out of here, I did want to ask you, it'll be our last opportunity to really talk about this probably, kind of revisiting the David Perron decision. Is it fair for us to look back at this now and say, hey, got it wrong? They messed up there. Should have brought back David Perron for the number that he was asking for?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think that it would be a make or break situation on where the Blues are at. And I don't say this from a standpoint of you got to show loyalty, even though I do think that's a big issue with players. I think, though, that the number was fair. And I think given David Perron a couple years, could have been fair with his production, and look, he's still producing. And look where the Blues power play, they missed that one-timer. There's so many holes, I think, that you lose when you let David Perron go and try to fill him with some other players. So I do think at the time, and certainly here in hindsight, that was a decision that I think the Blues could have made differently, and it would have turned out better for him.
JR, appreciate the time as always, man. Enjoy the game tonight. We'll talk with you again next week.
Yep. Thanks a lot, guys.
You got it. That's Jeremy Rutherford joining us here on a 101 ESPN. We'll give our extended thoughts on the David Perron situation, looking back on that about a year and a half later, coming up at 12:30. Blues back in action tonight against the Red Wings minus David Perron, who was suspended for this game. Pre-game with Alex starting at 5:30. Puck drop for that one. It's an early one coming up at 6:30. Coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my insurance agent, Tracy Bibb. Look, holiday season, you're spending money on all of the gifts, and you're probably looking at your budget wondering, probably spent more than I should have, than we planned for. And you probably have to readjust, and that's where Tracy comes into play, because you might not know what the insurance rates are going for. You might not know what you're paying in terms of insurance because it's just a number that comes out of your bank account. That's not the case with Tracy Bibb. She's always keeping you updated with the prices with her team over at Allstate, and they're always offering the most competitive rates to make sure that the money is going towards something and you're not overspending and you're protected. They preach all the time. It's not a matter of if something happens, it's when something happens. And when it does, you want that customer service available to you, and that's Tracy Bibb. So give her a call today and ask for a free non-committal quote. Say Alex Ferrario sent you, and she will take care of you, walk you through the entire process. 314-328-4260. That's 314-328-4260. It's no fib. You're always in great hands with the Bibb.
780-499-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. Coming up in about 10 minutes or so, what's the urgency to get a Paul Goldschmidt extension done? Should there be urgency to do so? We'll get into that coming up here in just a little bit. But let's start out with some questions from you guys via the text line. This one comes from the 314. Alex, do you believe that it is better for Major League Baseball that Ohtani went to L.A. to help a big-time team with the Dodgers? Or do you think it would have been better if he ended up going to a quote-unquote smaller market for more competitive balance in Major League Baseball?
I think it's better he goes to the Dodgers because I always think it's good to have villains in sports, and the Dodgers probably became that. But I also think it's good now. It sucks because it's the West Coast once again, and you don't see Ohtani if you're not going to be staying up late. But
So you'll never see a game?
probably never, other than highlights in the next morning.
Oh,
but
yeah, that's fine.
I also think it's just good when you have somebody like that going to a big market where everybody's focused in on it. And like I said, I personally believe villains are good in sports, and the Dodgers are now one of them.
I actually would have loved it if he went to Toronto because though they are a big market, they aren't viewed as that here in the States.
They're not the Yankees. They're not the
Yeah.
Red Sox. They're not the Dodgers.
And I
It's different.
think when you get the quote unquote smaller market teams that end up saying, you know what, let's go for it, let's spend big dollars, I think that's better for the game because it felt so predictable. And then we convinced ourselves when there was that private jet that was flying to Toronto, oh my God, he's actually going to go elsewhere. He's not going to be a Dodger. When in hindsight, that's been in the building for 5 years now that he was going to end up with the Los Angeles Dodgers. I don't know. I think it would have been better for baseball if it would have been more of a surprise and he would have gone to Toronto, for example, or if San Francisco was really in on the sweepstakes or if the Red Sox were really in on the sweepstakes. That's the kind of thing that I think would
I think
be
it's
better.
great for baseball. I do. I think it's good for him to play for a pedigree team, and we're talking about a team like the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Red Sox. I always thought that would be ideal for the sport. That being said, I don't care, man. It makes it harder for the Cardinals to be able to make the World Series if Shohei Ohtani is playing for the Dodgers. If we're talking about the best trios that have ever been assembled, somewhere on that list and not too low on that list is Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani. And that's what they have that they're building around right now. So, man, that team has the chance, if they get the right pitching in place, to be excellent next year. And this is why I said going into last season, man, the Dodgers don't look very good, guys. This looks like a rebuild year. And they won 100 bleeping games in their rebuild season. That roster was not very good. So credit to them for being able to maintain what their standard is, even in retool, rebuild, whatever you want to call it, type of a season. And now they got Shohei Ohtani. They're probably going to sign Yamamoto. They're going to go out and make a trade for Tyler Glass now. They're going to bring in a Shane Bieber. They're going to sign one of Lucas Giolito or Jack Flaherty as their fourth best starter, and hey, if it works out, great. If not, oh well, it is what it is. They've still got all the young pitching that you could possibly ask for. They're going to be really good.
They're absolutely signing Jack Flaherty, and Jack Flaherty's going to pitch great for him.
I feel like Lucas Giolito feels like the guy.
He's
that
another one
after, and out of those two, I could see him.
Jack feels like a Ray.
Yeah, something like that. I could see him signing with Kansas City. They're definitely going to get it wrong in that mid-tier market, and he's probably
Jack.
the guy.
If you're listening, I know you are a big fan of the show. Don't sign with Kansas City. They can't fix you, man. They've broken a lot of players. Go to Tampa Bay.
You're 100% correct. All right, from the 314, guys, I was doubted about my Alabama Crimson Tide making it into the top 4. With that being said, do you think that they will or could beat Michigan?
Is this from the guy we saw at Copper Fire one year that was decked out in Bama?
Oh, yeah.
Appreciate you still listening.
Longtime fan.
Who you got in Bama versus Michigan? We're 4 weeks away from the game being played, but let's go ahead and get our preview done.
Let's get it out of the way now. I personally think Michigan wipes the floor with them.
Really?
I think Michigan's the better team.
Man, I don't know. I think this is the best game. I don't think Washington, Texas will be as good as this one.
I think it's a really awesome matchup.
I think I would take Bama, honestly, over Michigan. Now, do I think they win it all? I don't know, but I think they can beat Michigan because you saw how dominant that defense was against the Georgia Bulldogs. Michigan doesn't have a passing game that's really threatening. They really just run the football at you, and if they can stop the run, which I think they can, they did a pretty good job of that against Georgia, they'll be able to beat the Michigan Wolverines. So I think they can beat Michigan. I don't know if they can beat Washington or Texas, though.
I think this is going to be a very low-scoring game. I don't think there's going to be a ton of points in it, 23-20, something like that feels right.
That's boring.
I think it's a 50-50 proposition, and that's a terrible answer for you guys, but it's the truth. I don't have a strong lean one way or the
You
other.
basically got the over-under. It's at 45.5.
Okay. If I had to pick one, I would probably pick Alabama, but that is honestly SEC bias. It really is. I think Jalen Milroe has really come into his own in the last 3 or 4 weeks. We've seen him grow in a significant way. And because of that, I'll side with the Alabama side. J.J. McCarthy still makes me a little nervous in big game moments, big situations late. If he's got to throw the football, I like him. I think he's fine. I have more belief in Alabama getting Jalen Milroe the football, get him into big-time situations. He's either running it or throwing it, and I feel like he's going to make a play. So that's really all it comes down to. It's shoddy science, but that's
can't say that on the air.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 618. Alex, this one I believe is for you. Guys, when you have the captain coming out and saying that players are not giving their best and they're just playing when they want to, I know that is on the player, but as a GM, shouldn't you be able to know the character of your players as well? Is that on the GM to know his players he's bringing into the organization, the coach to get the most out of him, or is it just a player issue?
I loved Braden Shen's response to that follow-up question by Lou Korak, because Lou said, is that on the leadership? And he said, sure, leaders are supposed to get these guys ready, but I can't control what these guys do in their uniforms when they're on the ice. I can't tell Jakub Vrana to back check the skater and not lose the board battle. And to be fair, like Doug Armstrong, he knows who he's bringing in. He knew Jakub Vrana was somebody who has not had the best pass. I mean, you don't get traded between two separate teams and then get cut by the team through waivers, then you come back and then you get traded again, because you're a guy that nobody wants to lose. So Doug Armstrong said it when they acquired Jakub Vrana. This is an opportunity for him to show who he is and go out there and rejuvenate his career. And he didn't do it here. The same can be said about, and I'm not just singling out Jakub Vrana, because there are more than just one guy that's not doing what Shen talked about. But no, I hate that reasoning of shouldn't this be on the coach and the leadership group to get those players going. Sure, everybody probably is on the same page once the puck drops, but then when the puck drops and adversity comes their way, if a player says, man, I don't want to work that hard tonight, well, they can't do anything about that.
The weird thing is, like, I don't know who those players are that they're talking about. Like, I know that they're not going to come out and just name names, but, like, I think Kyrou's been better this year. I really do.
Kyrou's not been the problem.
Like, so we can go up and down the lineup, and I'm thinking to myself, like, man, you've replaced half of this lineup from last year. So shouldn't it be better? Because these guys that you're bringing in from elsewhere, like, I don't think Kevin Hayes is coasting through games. I don't think Oscar Sundqvist is coasting through games. I'm pretty sure Braden Shen isn't. So we start narrowing it, like Jake Neighbors is not the guy.
It'd be wild if Shen was the one that was coasting through games.
Like, I don't know. Okay, who are we talking about here? It's so strange to me. I think that some of it is, we don't want to admit it because it's frustrating and maybe worse, they're just not very good. Like, this team just isn't very good. And when a team isn't good, it can sometimes feel as though there's a lack of effort. I don't know that it is that they're not trying on certain nights. I think Jakub Vrana didn't try. Like, I flat out think he did not care. There were board battles.
That guy skate past him and go into the zone and shoot it.
He's tired.
The board battles in the last couple of games, that was... They had to do something. You could not allow that guy to be back in your locker room. That
first goal that the Blues gave up to Chicago, where Vrana, like, reached out and he skated past him and shot it, you saw Craig Berube's thought process through his eyes. And then it happened again, and it was like, oh, yeah, this... I texted both of you. I said, Vrana's not going to be with this team beyond this weekend because of those three shifts.
You could not allow that guy to... wear the blue no jersey again. It couldn't happen. That sweater had to be ripped off of him and thrown away, because that guy could not be back here in the Blues uniform.
And to your point, just real quick, you mentioned, there's a reason he bounces around teams, and people would probably go, well, then doesn't Craig Berube know what player he is? Yeah, but every team can look at the talent and go, some point maybe this clicks.
Absolutely.
And like, they're different players.
Didn't work out for them. Might for us.
They're different players, so I hate to bring up the name, but it's the first name that I think of. Pran had the talent his first trip here in St. Louis, but it didn't click until he got traded away. And that's why you see a team continue to do this. But again, I get it.
But the first place he went, he figured it out. The first place he was traded to in Edmonton, he figured it out immediately, whereas Vrana was Detroit.
There was also off-ice issues.
For Vrana?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of this conversation, too, is like, I think you could easily explain it to yourself that, hey, because of the off-ice stuff that took place in his second stint,
but if it's just off-ice things, teams can teams can say, well, we'll work with them through it. And
I mean, when he was on the ice, though, he was super productive in Detroit. We talked about the numbers where, like, based on his games played, goals per game, etc., he was one of the best goal scorers in the NHL. And then it just totally evaporated. This year, you were getting none of the goal production and all of the bad defense. So when you combine those two things, he can't be on your roster anymore. But my main point is, I don't know that this team is a lack of try. I think they're just not talented enough. And when you get a team that's not good enough, it sometimes looks as though they're not trying because they get beat a lot. And when a team loses a lot, it typically ends up not.
And it's just hard to say that, too, because we've seen them dominate certain games also.
But that's what a team does that's inconsistent. Like a team that is inconsistent and not very good, they sometimes go out there and look great.
But that's where it comes into Shen's comments of when they're all on the same page from start to finish, they look like a team that's capable of at least being a playoff contender. But when you lose a couple of pieces...
The margin for error is zero for this team.
Especially when you lose a couple of pieces. If a couple of pieces don't play to the system that they want, everything breaks.
Or if the other team just has a couple of lucky bounces. That's the other thing that we probably don't give enough credence to. A lot of what the defensive system was early on in the season, and we wondered if this was the case or not, but we didn't know. It was Jordan Binnington having an unbelievable stretch of hockey, man. They were giving up a ton of chances, a ton. And Benner was just a brick wall in front of the net. And so you were like, oh, man, look at the goal suppression. You gave the numbers yesterday on the show, Alex. They were outstanding numbers. They were giving up like 2 fewer goals per game in the first 13 games of the season than they have in the last 13. Why is that? I don't think it's because the defense has been getting significantly worse. I think it's a little bit worse. But I think a lot of it is because you just haven't had the best goaltending that we've seen in St. Louis in 3 years over the last 13 games. I think that's a huge part of the equation. And when they get down early, they don't have the offense to be able to come back. And so now you just like throw the defense to the side and say, okay, we're going to become a rush team and everything opens up. And now it becomes a 5-1 loss, 5-2 loss, 3-1 loss, 6-3 loss. And that's where we're at. All right, coming up next. The Cardinals apparently want to re-sign Paul Goldschmidt. They want to extend him this offseason. Should there be urgency to do so? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
I knew for sure I had Paul Goldschmidt for at least next year and the year after, I would say the window's opening based on the talent you put on the bump now. With the current situation with the pitching staff and the rotation and the bullpen and Goldie on 1 year left, Arenado aging, next year will tell me what this year truly was when it comes to something like that. So in its current state, the window's closing.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, that was Jamie Rivers during the season talking about what the plan is with Paul Goldschmidt long term. Alex, Goldie has 1 year left on his current deal, and then he's a free agent. And according to Derek Gould of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, the Cardinals are open to, and really kind of urgent to, try to get an extension done with Paul Goldschmidt. Let me start by saying that, giving the opinion of, okay, what will they do versus what should they do? What will they do? I would be shocked if they don't get an extension done. They view Goldie as a legacy player. He won the MVP while he was in a birds on the bat uniform. This is a guy that they want to finish his career here in St. Louis, and my guess is they would hope he goes into the Hall of Fame as a Cardinal. That's how they will very likely view this. And honestly, probably should. Because that's who you are as an organization. And there's a lot of value in knowing who you are. It is important for the Cardinals to keep guys like Adam Wainwright and Yadier Molina in a Cardinals uniform. And if you could do the same with Paul Goldschmidt, more credit to you. Now, what should they do? What would I do? I would not feel any urgency whatsoever to get this extension done, Alex. I would not try to do it this offseason. I would want to see what he looks like in 2024 first. Your extension will begin when Paul Goldschmidt is 37 years old. That is not the kind of guy that I want to be signing a year in advance for market rate money. Now, if he's willing to accept less than what he's probably worth and he just says, hey, I just want to be a Cardinal, man. I want to finish my career here. I want to give you extra flexibility so that way you guys can continue to build around me.
Which, by the way, if there was a Paul Goldschmidt move, that would be it.
Maybe. He gets his money, though, man. For all the talk about Goldie, and he should. This is not me saying anything negative about Paul Goldschmidt. Get your money while you're in it, because this career does not last all that long in Major League Baseball. But I personally would not try to sign him this offseason unless it is a below market value deal, and I don't think Goldie's signing that this offseason. So he shouldn't accept anything less than $20 million because that's the QO, and let's be honest, they're QOing him after the season if he were to get to free agency. I would wait until midseason, All-Star break. If it looks like he's still the same Goldie that he's been, cool. Get him signed to a 2-year extension probably. Otherwise, though, I would not do this yet.
I don't even think I would do it if he looks good in the by the deadline. I wouldn't jump into this because I'd want to see, one, what Paul Goldschmidt looks like, and two, frankly, if you're the Cardinals, I think you need to decide what you would do in the sense you don't bring back Paul Goldschmidt, because that's the other telling sign with this team. Are you going to be willing to spend that money and upgrade your team elsewhere? Because one, do you have a first baseman replacement? Because look how long we were searching for Paul Goldschmidt as Cardinals fans before you got him. Sure. Do you have a first baseman replacement? Is it Jordan Walker? Because if it is, are you upgrading the outfield? If it's not Jordan Walker, are you going to spend that money to go get a first baseman? Is it Alec Burleson? And then if you do all of that, are you going to be willing to spend all of that money to upgrade your team on the pitching rotation or in the bullpen? That's my bigger question with this Cardinals team. Don't just jump in and say, well, we got to lock up Paul Goldschmidt before he goes because we don't want to lose this Hall of Fame caliber player. I'm trying to win, and if Paul Goldschmidt is the best player available to help me win, sure, re-sign him. But I'm not going to re-sign him before the season in hopes that he's going to be that guy, and I'm not going to sign him at the trade deadline because he looks like that guy for 4 months, because then when I do, and he doesn't look like that guy in the second half of the season or in the playoffs or the next year, now I've just put $20 to $25 million towards a player and said, well, we're stuck with this for the next couple of years, and you're going to be in the same spot you've always been.
Yeah, I would wait on a Paul Goldschmidt extension too, and I would wait till the deadline, but I'd see where you're at the deadline, because I'm not going to rule out they're not sellers at the deadline. And the reason I say that is because though the rotation is better on paper than it was last year, that's a low bar to clear. And I have questions about the effectiveness of the innings that they were so sought after this offseason. So I would wait till the deadline because he is getting older. I mean, you just mentioned he's going to be 37 when the contract extension kicks in. And it's not like that I'm we're raising this question, and there's not like, well, he just had another great year. Yeah, he was good again, but he was 20% above league average, and he had the lowest slugging of his career. And
My
that's the
concern
big
is that
question.
he becomes the next Lance Berkman.
Yeah.
Because when it goes for these guys, man,
World
it doesn't.
Series champion Lance Berkman.
Absolutely. And
In the outfield.
He was a massive piece to that puzzle. And the year prior, you guys remember, it was viewed as, hey, he's broken. He's spare parts. He's 35 years old. Why are the Cardinals signing this guy and giving him a deal? Like, he's not going to be able to recapture the form of what he was during the Killer Bees era. And he did for a year.
Let me save all of the text messages. No, it wasn't because they had better coaching with Lance Berkman.
He broke.
That probably was
His body broke down on him. And to be fair, like, Goldie is very different as a specimen than what Lance Berkman was when he was here in St. Louis. I understand that. Here's the problem. Can you guys show me the comparison for what we're talking about here with Paul Goldschmidt? Who is the guy that was as good, as consistent as Paul Goldschmidt has been into his late 30s and then just continued doing that until his age like 39 season? I'm legitimately 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Who's the hitter that did that? Because a lot of the guys that you compare him to, they went down a cliff. One guy specifically that I would reference is Joey Votto. Joey Votto is a very different stylistic hitter, but up until his age 37 season, he was awesome, man. A really, really good player. And over the last 2 years, which is basically the part of the extension that we'd be talking about here in St. Louis, 689 OPS, 745 OPS, below league average both seasons offensively. Prior to that, 160, 167, 126, then had a season where he was down, 95, and then the COVID year, and then boom, 140. This thing goes quick, man. When you're into your late 30s, it can go like that. And so we're just waiting. We're waiting. When's the cliff coming? And then it's going to go down precipitously. I don't want to be the team that has him signed to a 2 or 3 year extension when that happens. You don't want to be the Reds where you're stuck with that big contract number on the books when you didn't have to do it. Don't make the Matt Carpenter mistake again. Don't do what you did last offseason with Miles Mikolas again. Wait until you get to midseason. That is when I would personally be willing to give him a 1 or 2 year deal. 1 or 2 years. Hopefully you could do with him what you did with some of these other guys where it's a 1 year contract with a club option. That would be ideal, but I would not explore this as a long-term extension this offseason with Paul Goldschmidt because you are begging for something bad to happen where you're stuck with more money that you don't want on the books the way that you are, let's be honest here, with both Yadier Molina and Adam Wainwright over the last couple of seasons. Don't make that mistake.
Yeah, I'm with you. You can't tie yourself into a deal, especially when there is something that is just screaming red flag. When you have your career low in slugging percentage for a guy that is hitting in the middle of the order and is being viewed as a power bat in your lineup, and he just comes off a year where he had the lowest slugging percentage of his career, you can't jump in and give him a contract extension. That's just not smart baseball business right there. Now, I get it. If you want to view him as a legacy player, sure, but that's where you're right. They need to go into it, wait, give him a 1 year deal, put a club option on it if he would take that. And if not, I mean, I hate to say this, but it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if they said, you know what, we just can't do this because it puts us in a bad spot. Kind of what happened in the Albert Pujols situation. They said, I don't know if we can go to this length on this deal. Puts us in a bad situation. They were right in that contract that he signed with the Angels, and then they got him back for one final year, and it was great. So I just hope that they don't make the mistake and sign him to a contract extension heading into spring training.
A lot of people saying the one guy that you could really point to that was able to continue hitting at the same level is Nelson Cruz, and there's a lot of truth to that. Here's the problem. The fact that we can immediately single out the one guy basically post-steroid era that was able to continue to be at the exact same level in their mid to late 30s as they were prior to that, we've all got the same answer. That tells you there's a lot of guys that were either Hall of Fame or borderline Hall of Fame players that fell off. They get to age 36, 37, 38 years old, and then boom, it's the decline phase almost immediately. Goldie's a guy that has dealt with some back stuff over the last couple of years. I just would not rush in to any of these kinds of situations if you don't have to do so. I understand why you want to do this. I would not want to do it to the degree where it ends up locking you in long term. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, Alex has a really interesting perspective on the David Perron saga and what happened after the Blues let him walk. It really dates even prior to that decision. We'll get into that coming up in about 15 minutes or so. But coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Better to Forget It here on 101 ESPN.
There's nothing more important than the look and feel of your home. So now's the time to make your home your retreat. Replace your tired old windows and doors with Marvin replacement products designed to improve comfort and efficiency. Fisher Window and Door.
Confidence in myself.
I could do it.
Especially if it was an empty.
You say you can?
Yeah.
Well, this is the guy who thinks he can win an Olympic gold medal playing
I
table
could.
tennis. Now, if the plane was just empty and it's just me, I'd have all the confidence in the world. But there
Would you really?
Probably, yeah.
Because I would call whoever I needed to call and let them know, like, hey, I'm going to die.
Well, yeah, but I'd have all the confidence in the world. I'd be like, well, if I go down, it's just me. But if I got other people I'm concerned about, like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that.
I might volunteer. Like, they'd go, oh, my gosh, can someone find a plane? And I'd go, I can't.
Tanner would stand up with confidence and be like, oh,
Yeah.
we're saved. And the next thing you know, it's just Tanner. Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing, guys.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm dying. I am making it. This is going to be the end of me. BK had a good run. Feel like we did a pretty decent show for the time when we had it, but BK is no longer with us because he could not land that plane safely. Alex, there's new research that has been reported, and asked about this, according to a poll by YouGov, 50% of male respondents said they would be able to land the plane safely.
Yeah, they're Tanner.
50%. What I learned in this is that 50% of male respondents are way too confident in their own abilities, regardless of what it is that they're being asked
Now,
about.
if you were asking those guys, I wonder if the follow-up would be the person on the other side is going to walk you through everything.
Sure, I don't care.
I have a little bit more confidence in myself that if somebody's telling me what to do, I could probably figure it out.
I don't know.
If I was walking you through surgery, do you think you would be able to get...
No, because I don't have
If
steady
I
hands.
had somebody walking me through it, absolutely.
I
I don't have
could.
steady
Steady
hands
hands.
enough for surgery, but for landing a plane...
Well, yeah, because landing a plane, you're talking about using the freaking direction or whatever on it. Steady hands on surgery is like, yeah, if you cut one artery wrong, the guy's dead.
Yeah, if you do one thing wrong with landing your
but
plane,
look, if
you
nobody
are
else
also
is going to
dead.
volunteer, everyone's going down no matter what. So at least I'm going to give you guys a trying chance.
You need me to go ahead and maneuver a cruise ship? I could probably figure out a way to do that.
The easiest thing possible. Where you're going to do is turn the damn wheel.
Yeah, I
It's
drive
going
the
to take a
family
while for it to
pontoon.
turn.
I could do it.
I'm just going to go straight ahead, and we'll see if we get to where we're supposed to go. At some point, I'm going to hit land. But if
That's
you're
not
telling
your
me...
goal.
Like I said, I
All
play
right,
a lot
never
of-
mind. You can't do
I
that.
play
You
a lot of
can't even
video
drive
games.
a cruise ship.
I play a lot of video games. I think I could navigate the plane well enough. I just need to know what buttons do what.
I would be willing to give it a try. And if I had someone definitely like on my side as like a co-captain, like, okay, here's what we need to do. You need to push this. You need to do that. Oh, 100% I can volunteer.
No.
and you got autopilot
chance.
too, which is going to keep you going. Now, if you're telling me like one of the
No,
wings have been
let's say you
blown
don't
off,
get autopilot.
do I have somebody walking me through it?
Sure, yeah, you can
I'm
have
in.
somebody
I
in
think
your
I
ear.
could do it. I think
If
I
they
could do
come
it.
on over the intercom and said, we are looking for
Ryder, do you
someone
think you
to
could
help.
do this? If somebody asked
Ryder
you,
plays more video
you gotta
games than I
make-
do.
you got-
He wasn't listening.
Plane, your pilot has been incapacitated for one reason or another, right? Had a heart
Yikes.
attack, bam, gone. No
Wow.
longer there.
Well, snake's on a
They
plane.
say, hey,
Snake got him.
We need somebody to get this plane landed safely. It's an emergency landing, and you're the only one that's capable, willing, or able. Do you think you're landing that plane safely?
Yeah, you do, Ryder. Don't be dumb.
Did he say yes?
I
No,
shook
he
his
said
head
no.
no.
Okay.
No,
At least we've got one person that is reasonable around
Oh
here.
yeah,
I-
everybody in this building, if you ask, they'd be
I
like,
think
"Yeah, I
you
could
lack,
probably do
I
it."
think you lack confidence in yourself. You know,
Yeah, of course I do, because
need to
I
sit down and
believe
talk
that being
about
a
it.
pilot is really freaking hard. And
I'm
they
not
have
saying it's not. I'm just saying.
thousands upon thousands of hours of training in order
Absolutely.
to land that thing safely.
But
and
if I got-
am not going to believe that I am capable of doing so.
I would give it
without
my best
any
shot.
But I
training
got somebody
whatsoever.
intelligent on the other side
Yeah.
walking me through how to do it.
Sure. You know how long it took me to figure out how to learn to drive a stick shift?
Well, look,
More
I'm
than
telling
one
you,
crash
man.
landing.
Oh, wow.
I'll tell you that much.
Well, that's a you problem then.
The first time you ever tried to drive a stick, you were like, yeah, I've got this,
Yeah,
ready
I
to go.
probably jacked the gears up a little bit, but I didn't crash it.
No, I'm not saying you crashed it, but you get one shot with this thing. You're also not flying, 10,000 miles an hour when you're.
Oh, they're just going to say,
driving
all right,
a-
hit this button. Okay, hit this button. All right.
Your
Now
mom's
you're going to do this.
1995 Honda Civic
You're gonna do
around
this.
Schnook's parking lot. It's a little different.
man,
in
You're going to
terms of
slow the plane down.
the
you
stakes
bringing
that
up
are-
you bringing up stick shift, really showing your age this segment. Okay,
I learned how to drive on a stick shift.
you're showing your
My
age
first
a
car
little
was
bit.
a stick.
Do you even
Man,
know what a
you're old.
stick shift is?
Oh, I know what they are, but I've never driven
I actually
one.
prefer driving a stick.
Oh, no.
right.
Hell no.
Grandpa.
Hell no. I got a stick shift on a or I had a stick shift on
also
a riding
enjoy-
mower, and the thing was awful.
You also enjoy Cardinals baseball on the radio while sitting around the fireplace and not having to see it, just imagining
Also
it
getting
in
that
your
ink
head.
on your fingers in the morning
Yeah.
when you're reading the news.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Grandpa.
You
No
like
wonder why
reading
you can't be
hardcover books?
trusted.
Oh, I'm the grandpa of this group.
Yeah.
Coming
Well,
up
this grandpa
next.
would fly the plane.
Like putting your slippers on when you get home to keep your feet warm.
Well,
You
he's
have,
totally
you
that
have
guy.
in-house shoes, don't you?
He
I don't
does.
actually. That is one thing that I've never been into. I don't like wearing shoes in the house
Shut
in
up!
general.
You have a white pair of sneakers that
Did you
when you
just
get
tell me to
home,
shut
I
up?
did.
Yeah.
You have a
Don't
you
you
have
talk to me like that.
you have a white pair of sneakers that when you get home, you say I got to put my in-house shoes
Only
on.
for mowing. He's Alex. That's
Well, that's
T-Bone on
true.
BK. Coming up next, it's time for our Major League Baseball offseason roundup. Yeah! You're on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, you got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. It is time for our Major League Baseball offseason roundup.
You're not getting a yeehaw there. No, great. Pew, pew.
Here on 101 ESPN. All right, let's start with this. Guys, the big news yesterday was that Shohei Ohtani not only signed with the Los Angeles Dodgers, he did so for $2 million a year, essentially, according to all of the reporting that's taken place. Alex, I'm going to get nerdy here for a second. I do want to get your thoughts on him deferring $68 million of his $70 million salary per year for a decade. We'll get into that here in just a second. For those that aren't familiar with how this works, to get real nerdy and take away any of the fun before we get to the fun part of it.
Get nerdy with it.
We learned this last year, man, with the Adam Wainwright contract. These teams do have to put that money into an account, essentially, an offshore account, for it to be there whenever the player is ready for it. So the Dodgers are technically allocating this money for this season. It's just not immediately going to Shohei Ohtani. And the reason why they do it and it matters for them is because of the CBT thresholds. They are now able to stay under that tax easier because of what they're doing with this, because it's not applied to the payroll the same way. It's all accounting, essentially, for the Dodgers. This is basically them doing in baseball what NFL teams do with signing bonuses, where it's spread out over multiple years, so it makes it easier. Teams will use like 40 years and stuff. It's a lot of nerdy number stuff that doesn't really matter for the casual fan, but just know the Dodgers are still paying $70 million. It's just not all immediately going to Shohei, so that way they can put better talent around him in the immediacy. The Cardinals never could have, would have done this.
I don't know. You could have saved up all of your money until the end of this contract and then paid him in lump sum.
Let's set all of that aside, though, for a second. Hot damn, they're paying him $2 million a year in salary. What was your reaction when you saw that, Alex?
Smart move by the Dodgers. I mean, one, you're staying under that luxury tax threshold, so you don't have to pay all that money. But two, you can put a good team around him. Like, it would not surprise me if they get Yamamoto and Josh Hader by the end of this offseason. Now, because of this Shohei Ohtani. And frankly, I get Shohei Ohtani doing that, because if you're him and you just lived through what you did with the Angels of being mediocre every single year when you were like Hall of Fame worthy in the first 6-7 years of your career, yeah, I'll take $2 million a year at the front of this so you could go put a World Series contender together and still make the $700 million. Good for him.
Can I be honest? Maybe this is just the jerk in me. When I saw this, my immediate reaction was, I want to know what Art Moreno said. I wonder if we would have done that, you know, the Angels. I wonder what the reaction in the room was when they saw that was all deferred, because they love to avoid the luxury tax threshold in Anaheim. But good for Ohtani, man. I mean, I love the idea that he said, you know what, I want all my money and what I'm worth, but I want to also help the team, and I want to go out there, and I don't want to just win a championship in 10 years. I want to win multiple championships in LA. So I love the way that this contract was structured and everything. So I couldn't believe how much money was actually deferred, because as we remembered about how the Cardinals, they count that into their payroll. So essentially, the Dodgers just spent $682 million in free agency already this year, which is chef's kiss. Just fantastic.
Good for them.
Good for them for doing this. Like, this is a smart way to go about it. They are actually investing in their team more than what baseball tends to allow, right? They are doing in LA now what the Mets were doing in New York, but they're doing it smarter. Like, they're just doing what the Mets tried to do better. So credit to the Dodgers. They're going to go out there and they're probably going to add significant pieces to their rotation as well. Yamamoto sweepstakes are heating up now. I mean, would it surprise anybody if Yamamoto ended up on the Dodgers? It probably shouldn't. So that's where we're at with them. Let's continue with our Major League Baseball offseason roundup. Let's get back to one of the stories that we talked about earlier today. Paul Goldschmidt, according to Derek Gould, is potentially under consideration for the Cardinals to have an extension in place this offseason. Alex, if you were the Cardinals, would you be looking to extend Paul Goldschmidt?
No, only if he's willing to accept a lower than market value, which, as we talked about earlier, I'm thinking less than 20 mil. And if you're him, you're not doing that because the qualifying offer's 20 mil. So no, I would not. I frankly would let this play out, because after an MVP season, it didn't live up to the expectation, and I'd be worried a dude who's going to be 38 at the end of this is not going to be the type of player that needs to be making $20+ million a year. So no, I wouldn't.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it either. He had the lowest slugging percentage of his entire career last year. So there's signs that show that it's starting to fall for Paul Goldschmidt. And as you mentioned earlier, if it falls quickly for guys once they get past really that age 35 season. We're talking about signing him to a contract extension when he turns, 38? I'm out on it. I would go by year basis, but I'd even wait on that. I'd see what he looks like at least in the first half.
That's where I'm at. I would wait until this upcoming season. I want to find out where he's at. Is he still the player that he was in his MVP form? Hell, is he 70% of that player? And if he is by the All-Star break, go ahead and sign him to a 1-year contract extension. I would be trying to go year by year at this point in time. He's going to be up in his upper 30s. The only guy that I could really point to and say, hey, that guy was the same dude in his late 30s as he was in his early 30s in recent memory is Nelson Cruz. It's the only hitter that I can use to describe in that way. If I can only find one of them, it's really hard for me to say you're going to be the next. He might be, or he might have an injury this year that we're not currently foreseeing, and then it ends up kind of sidelining him for a couple of weeks. He comes back. He's not quite the same. He looks like he's lost a little bit of his luster against fastballs, which, by the way, did seem to be the case at times last year. Trying to catch up with that. It's hard. This game is really, really hard. There's a reason why most guys decline significantly by the time they get into their late 30s. So that would be something that I would be very, very hesitant to do this offseason. Unless he gave me a discount, which he should not do, I would not be doing it this offseason.
Maybe it'll be like Shohei Ohtani and say, just give me $2 million for the next 3 years.
Couple more things as we get through our Major League Baseball offseason.
Roundup, ride 'em, partner.
Did you guys see the report about the Royals checking in with this free agent pitching class?
Yeah, checking in. Hey, you interested in playing for Kansas City? No? Okay, thanks.
So I have heard rumors that they're in on some of these guys in the middle tier. Jack Flaherty, Michael Wacha, Marcus Stroman, Lucas Giolito, Seth Lugo. All 5 pitchers are guys that, according to multiple different reports, the Royals have at least checked in on.
It's a hell of a rotation if you're the Royals.
I think they'll sign one of them.
Give me a reason from the Kansas City Chiefs and Royals expert. Why would they want to sign in Kansas City?
Why would they want to sign money?
Yeah.
I mean, purely money.
Oh, good. Good.
I'd go there. I'd move to KC for money.
If you're Jack Flaherty, how does that help you rejuvenate your career?
Why did Jose Quintana sign a 1-year contract with the Pittsburgh Pirates? Because he was guaranteed to be in their rotation and he was going to throw every 5 days. If you're Jack Flaherty, that's what you need. If you sign with a contender, you'll be what you were last year with Baltimore. By the end of the season, you're probably pitching out of the bullpen. So you want to get yourself back on track, this might be the team to do it with. Now, I would not tell him to do so. I would say go sign with a team like the Tampa Bay Rays or the Cleveland Guardians. Like, go to a team that doesn't quite have that number 5 starter in place right now, and then just latch on with a really smart team that will get the best out of you.
If I'm Jack Flaherty, I'm going to a place where they have brought a pitcher back from the dead, i.e. Michael Wacha. And guess what? That team's not going to have 3 of their pitchers for the next, 6 months? At least I'm guaranteed a spot there because they need pitching help.
Yeah, I get it from the Royals' perspective because they have no depth in the minor leagues and they don't have guys that can eat innings, so they probably need to overpay. Not only do they need to overpay to lure them there, they've also got to pay the loser's tax as well because they've been a losing franchise since the World Series run. So it makes sense from the Royals' perspective. Somebody's going to have to pitch for them next year. I just don't know, a Lugo who's drawing interest from competing teams. Would you rather go there, or would you potentially, and look, I get it, take the money back and go to Kansas City. I think they should be more in the market for those Jack Flaherty type guys that are looking to bounce back.
I like the idea of Marcus Stroman at that park. It's a massive outfield, really hard to hit home runs there. He's a guy that is on the ground more often than not. I think Marcus Stroman makes a ton of sense in Kansas City, but if I'm Marcus Stroman, I don't know that I necessarily want to sign with Kansas City. By the way, they did sign Will Smith. No, not that Will Smith yesterday. And Will Smith is a back-to-back World Series champion, so you know what that means. Ipso facto, carry the one. Will Smith
Whoever
and
trades
the Royals
for him will win a World Series.
Cardinals trading for Will Smith at the deadline. He will be a World Series winner here with the Cardinals. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we're diving into some NFL quick hitters. But next, Alex, we do have some news on the Jakub Vrana front. We'll get to it, and the lesson to be learned from the whole experience with Vrana here on 101 ESPN.
You have to bring some defense to the table. I mean, I said this recently, I'll say it again, is if you just keep throwing Vrana out there and he's not paying any attention to the defensive zone, how can you get on Jordan Kyrou for not playing defense? Hey, if you let these guys free, could they score a few more goals? They could, but I don't think you're going to win the team over in terms of how you want to play and how all guys are held accountable.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, that was Jeremy Rutherford a few weeks ago talking about why the Blues needed to move on from the Jakub Vrana experience, and they have officially done so. Alex, according to reports nationally, the Blues have officially now placed Jakub Vrana on waivers. This was the expectation yesterday. They ended up, it sounds like, trying to explore maybe some trades that were out there. Nothing came of that, so Vrana is going to be placed on waivers. I'd be surprised, honestly, if anybody claimed him at his current price, so probably end up signing somewhere else in free agency for a minimum level contract somewhere. The Jakub Vrana experience, for all intents and purposes here in St. Louis, is over. Alex, what did you take from it? What did we learn about the Jakub Vrana experience, or maybe big picture, what can the Blues learn from this that they should apply to future moves, either during the season or in the offseason?
That one-sided players don't match this team's identity. And you saw it with Mike Hoffman. You saw it towards the end of Vladimir Tarasenko's career, and then, of course, you just saw it with Jakub Vrana. I know people say, oh, well, Craig Berube can't coach these types of players. I'm not sure anybody can coach these types of players unless you put him on a line that has a Selke candidate of a centerman. Like, I'm thinking you put him in L.A. to play with Anze Kopitar. I'm thinking you put him in Florida to play with Barkov. Those types of players, yeah, Jakub Vrana can play for because you've got somebody who is taking care of the other side of the ice, but it just has not worked out for this Blues team with guys that are in the lineup solely to bring offense. And Mike Hoffman was this way. They finally figured it out at the end of his time in St. Louis on the power play, but that's also the difference. Vrana didn't figure it out on the power play. Vrana wasn't shooting the puck. And if you're not shooting the puck, meaning if you're not shooting the puck and it's getting on goal, he was shooting the puck and it was going elsewhere, and you're not playing the other side of the ice, then you can't make it work here. This team, there are teams in the NHL that solely operate on individual prowess to where that player goes out there and dominates, but those are superstar-esque players. Teams don't operate under the assumption of a guy like Jakub Vrana is going to win us hockey games. Sure, he was awesome in Detroit, but Detroit was also very bad and needed somebody to score goals for them. This team needs to have somebody who can play both sides of the ice and be responsible and is a piece of the machine, not just the individual who thinks he can do it himself.
Yeah, I think you're right on in terms of it. It's just so hard to make it work with guys that are just this one-sided. You know, you can get away with like a Vladimir Tarasenko, who's a one-sided player, but can go through spurts where he plays decent defense. I mean, there was like no spurt of decent defense from Jakub Vrana, and it's just so hard to make it work. I've mentioned this in the office. It reminds me of when you have that slugging left-handed hitter in baseball that just strikes out a ton, to where there are stretches where you look at it and go, man, this is great. This guy's hitting 40 bombs. Remember the Brandon Moss experience in his first half. But then there are stretches where he's striking out and he's hitting like 150, and he's in the middle of your lineup and you're going, wait, what just happened? That's what this reminds me of, is these kind of players, these one-sided, offensive-minded goal scorers that probably are best suited for roles that are when they're on a team that's rebuilding. Like, look at Mike Hoffman. Mike Hoffman is suited perfectly. Why? Because they need somebody that's just going to go out there, that's going to skate around, play some pond hockey, and try and score goals. That's the kind of team that those guys belong on. When you're trying to win, and like the Blues are in a retool, but they still want to try and get to the playoffs. When you're in that spot, they just don't mesh in well with the team.
So I think the difference between a lot of the guys that we've talked about that could potentially work and what Jakub Vrana was is you better be freaking elite at that thing that you do well if you're terrible at the other stuff.
Yeah.
Like if you were a really good defensive-minded forward, but you never contribute offensively, you can't be what we saw last year, what they were trying to make work on that top line with what's-his-face?
Levo.
Josh Levo.
How could you forget him?
He's not good enough defensively to be that guy where you're not contributing in any meaningful way offensively. It's just not good enough.
I haven't checked in on him overseas right now.
I wonder why.
Playing in Germany.
If you're going to be an
points.
offensive-minded player that gives you no defense, you can't be Jakub Vrana, who's been like the 10th best offensive player for you so far this year. He's done nothing on the power play. Man, if you're going to be that guy, you better be dynamic offensively. Like, Jordan Kyrou in previous seasons, for all of his faults defensively, he earned this contract. He did. Because of the puck going in the back of the net when he's out there on the ice. He does that. He put 37 goals up last year. If the Blues didn't give him this deal, you know who would have? About 25 other teams in the NHL. Because that is how skilled he is offensively. There's a reason Jakub Vrana was probably made available to every team yesterday in the NHL for basically the Robert Bortuzzo deal. And every team in the NHL said, nah, we're good. We don't need to give an asset up for him. We don't want to take on that salary. We'll go ahead and see if he wants to sign with us for a veteran minimum deal on like a PTO, the way that somebody just did with the your guy.
Jesse Puljujarvi with Pittsburgh.
Jesse Puljujarvi did
But
with
here's the
Pittsburgh.
thing. He doesn't get that opportunity. If he clears waivers, he goes to the minors. And if he refuses to go to the minors, then if I'm not mistaken, the Blues are off the hook for that money because
they could outright him.
Yeah, but then they
That's
don't have to
probably
pay
what's
the
gonna
money.
happen.
Probably, unless they say, like, if you go to the minors and figure it out, he did this with Detroit last year when he cleared waivers. He went to Grand Rapids and scored 6 goals in 11 games. And then, of course, they brought him back to try and build the value back up and traded him at the deadline. So, but that's the thing right now is this should be one of those eye-opening moments for Vrana. It's like, man, in back-to-back years I've been put through waivers.
He didn't learn his lesson. We know who he is.
He's not going to learn his lesson. But see, the part for me to where, and I know there's coming in on the Air Comfort Service text line because I've got the tweets as well. Well, Craig Berube can't coach these types of players. I don't see other players like this that work on other teams. Like Alex DeBrincat can be a perfect example. You brought him up in the office. Mm-hmm. Guys, he didn't work in Ottawa. He was with Ottawa last year and didn't live up to those expectations. Now he's producing with Detroit, but I don't know if you looked, but Detroit's been in like a 4-game losing streak, and he was a -7 in the last 3 games. If you're not scoring, you're hurting your team.
Maybe. I mean, if you're scoring the way that DeBrincat is, like he's a +2 on the ice so far this year, this version of Alex DeBrincat you can win with. The problem is they're not a very good team around him right now. Well, they've got a lot of other issues.
But that also goes back to my point of you got to have people around him. He's been playing with Dylan Larkin, and Dylan Larkin is a good two-way forward. Like, you've got to have the proper pieces for these types of players, and Vrana just never meshed well with any of the guys that the Blues had.
And like, it was a relationship, quote unquote, that was just destined to fail. Because what was the goal for the Blues this season coming into it? It was, okay, we need to get back to playing a good defensive style of hockey, and we're going to change our scheme from man-to-man and trying to get quickly up the ice in this kind of pond hockey style-esque rush team to we're going to go to this zone defense, and we are basically just going to play slugfest hockey. That never was going to fit into Vrana's game because he doesn't want to play defense, so he's not going to fit into a team that's focusing on defense. And if you're not a rush team, Vrana's not going to have much success because he wants to get out on the rush. Now, maybe he could have thrived on the power play, but as we saw, it just didn't work on the power play. So then you're back to the same conversation that BK mentioned of, okay, well, if you're like the 10th best guy offensively and you're by far the worst guy defensively, it's just not going to work out. This was just destined to fail when they committed to, we are going to become a defensive hockey team.
Blues going back to an old lineup that they used last year. They're going to have Pavel Buchnevich back at center. That is one of the corresponding moves, so to speak, for Vrana being placed on waivers, him not being in the lineup for the Blues, of course, tonight. And by the way, we've got your chance right now. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to score a pair of tickets to see the Blues game this Saturday against the Dallas Stars at Enterprise Center. 314-399-9646 is your text line to do so. If you know the answer to this question and your texture number 101, you're getting that pair of tickets to see the Blues versus the Stars. The question is, earlier today, Alex, we talked about what percentage of men believe that they could successfully land a plane in a crash landing scenario. What was that percentage? If you can give us the correct percentage at 314-399-9646, you are going home with a pair of tickets to see Blues versus Stars on December 16th. That is this Saturday at Enterprise Center. Coming up next, we're getting into some NFL quick hitters here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my dentist, 100 West Dental off of Manchester. Nobody likes going to the dentist. You get anxiety. You're worried about having to sit in the chair and talk about everything. Here's the thing, though. You got to make sure you're going, because if you don't have the proper dentist that's taking care of everything long term, you'll end up like me, where they overlook a tumor, and the next thing you know, you're losing 7 teeth and have to pay for implants. Don't be that person. Get with the dentist like 100 West Dental. Dr. Pryor and his team have a new office off of Manchester with the most modern technology, and they are all about the preventative procedure. And they got a couple of deals going on right now for our listeners. If you go into 100 West Dental or schedule online at 100westdental.com and mention my name, you can get $1,000 off on an Invisalign package. And if you mention 101 ESPN, you get a free whitening kit for your teeth. White Christmas, white teeth at 100 West Dental. So get on out there today. Tell them I sent you. Tell them you heard it on 101 ESPN. Schedule your appointment at 100westdental.com. Get with the best at 100 West.
Terry Hendricks here with a Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. The Blues will be back in action tonight as they host the Detroit Red Wings, and we'll have pregame coverage starting at 5:30 with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey joins Chris Garber for Puck Drop at 6:30. News out of the NFL today, Justin Herbert being shut down for the season as he's undergoing surgery on a broken finger on his throwing hand. The Sports Center update was brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, you got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. By the way, I went back and did the math because we had a lot of people calling out Alex.
My pearls.
About whether or not he was right. That was well played. On the Blues being able to make it work. If they had just basically kept the gang together from 2020. So that means keeping Ryan O'Reilly around, keeping David Perron around, keeping Parayko and Petro and Wallman. The answer is yes. And in fact, in 2020, the first year where they kind of broke the band up, they would have had an extra about $7 million to be able to go out and play with. If they wanted to add Krug into this mix, they could have still done that. If they wanted to add Tanev, they could have done that. If they wanted to go make a trade, they could have done that. There was not only the possibility of making it work, they could have made it work and then some via the free agent market.
How dare somebody question my research?
Yeah, Alex,
my pearls.
All right, let's get into some NFL quick hitters. Guys, much of the conversation following the Chiefs and Bills game has been centered on the Chiefs. Justifiably so. They stink. They're terrible. They don't care about any kind of little details, and they think that it's the refs' problem that they continue to screw these things up, even though their receivers have lost them directly 4 games this year by screwing something up on the last drive of the game. Neither here nor there.
That sounded personal.
What did that win mean for the Bills, Alex? Did it change at all the way that you view them in the AFC playoff picture?
I mean, it doesn't change the way I view them because I still believe that they're a team that can, just blow it up at the worst timing ever. Thanks a lot to just that offense in general, whether you want to blame Josh Allen or anybody else. But if I'm Buffalo, it tells me that the AFC is wide open, and I have an opportunity to capitalize on this because you just beat the team that everybody still believed was a Super Bowl contender, and you were the better team in that game despite everyone complaining about the officiating there. Right now, there's one team that's the juggernaut in the AFC, and it's Baltimore. So if I'm Buffalo, I look at that as, well, everybody's got a shot in one game, as T-Bone likes to say. This is a victory that proves, we could be in this playoff conversation.
It didn't do much for me, honestly.
Okay.
The only thing it confirmed for me was, okay, they're still in the hunt because they now blend into that big mix of 7 and 6 teams. Didn't do anything for me. I don't trust Kansas City. I kind of expected them to lose the game when Pacheco was out. I look at Buffalo, and they remind me so much of what the Toronto Blue Jays were this year going into the playoffs, where, if Buffalo gets in, it's going to be like, whoa. Padres. That's the team that can go on a run. And I looked at them the whole time and went, okay, but they haven't proven that they could do that all year long. Padres, another good example. They're paper tigers. And maybe they get in, they're getting right back out because they're not playing consistent enough football for me. They've got the weapons to do it, but they just cannot piece it together. So for me, it didn't really do much.
Yeah, I think they're the Padres, honestly. I think that they are the team that if they get in, guys, I think a lot of teams in the National League would have been afraid of the Padres if they got into the postseason. If the Bills get into the postseason, they could totally go on a run. And this has less to do for me with the Bills and more to do with the AFC playoff field. I don't trust the Dolphins. I don't trust the Ravens. I certainly don't trust the Jaguars defense. That unit stinks. And the Chiefs have not made us trust them at all at any step so far this season. So can the Bills go on a run? Yeah. And they needed that game so badly. That was the starting point. The next one is this weekend. And according to Las Vegas, they are a favorite right now at home against the Dallas Cowboys. That is shocking to me. They will be favored, I would guess, in each of their next 3 games, which will put them at 10 wins going into the final weekend of the season when they travel to Miami to play the Dolphins for a game that very well could end up determining the outcome of that division. So I think it changes a lot because going into that game, I thought they were going to be done for the postseason. And if they had lost, I think we all would have been writing their eulogy today. Alex would have been reading it for us. Instead, I'm talking about them as a potential team that can make it out of the AFC. All right, next thing up here as we go through some NFL quick hitters. If you could handpick the 3 AFC playoff teams for entertainment purposes that end up making it in via the wild card. Who would you choose? Let's operate under the assumption here that the Dolphins, Ravens, Jaguars, and Chiefs end up winning their respective divisions as they are currently doing so.
Buffalo would be one. Cleveland would be one.
Oh, Cleveland is interesting.
And I think I don't know who this last one is because honestly, they're all terrible. The Colts are boring as all hell to me. Texans without Tank Dell, they're not as interesting to me. God, I don't want to see the Steelers or Bengals.
Really?
I guess it's the damn Broncos just because of watching.
Talk about boring.
Yeah, just
dink
because of
and dunk.
watching Russell Wilson. But it's like it's the Broncos and Jets, and I don't know if the Jets have a realistic shot. So, yeah, it would probably be whoever the hell you want to throw in at the end.
So I agree with the Bills because they are a roller coaster of emotion. I actually kind of do agree on the Browns. Watching Joe Flacco hit the fountain of youth.
Fun, man.
Hilarious.
It's hilarious. It's fun.
He's been, a top 15 quarterback since returning?
And watching him outplay the other team on the other side
Guys,
is just funny.
Think of this. He's thrown for 300 passing yards more times this year than Deshaun Watson has.
Oh, my God.
What the hell?
Way to go, Cleveland.
So
Dude,
I'm
you
going
need
to take the
2
Browns.
former Cleveland quarterbacks. So the current one, Joe Flacco, and Baker Mayfield are both better than Deshaun Watson.
All you needed to
Either
do,
of them.
Cleveland, was just call Joe Flacco and say, hey, you want to come out of retirement?
And
By the
keep
way,
all
hey,
your picks.
Jets, he was in your locker room last year.
You got Zach Wilson.
Yeah.
Did you see Wilson put up 30?
I think the Jets would be in the playoffs right now if they had Joe Flacco instead of what they've been trotting out there every week at quarterback.
And Aaron
I don't
Rodgers.
know.
And Aaron Rodgers
that
wouldn't have
offensive
had.
line would have killed
It's
our
bad.
boy Joe Flacco.
And Aaron Rodgers wouldn't have had to have a miraculous healing.
Yeah, I think my third team
Ankle
would,
sprain.
Yeah, could have taken his time.
tough. My third team would be, I think, the Cincinnati Bengals.
That's
because they've got the weapons offensively. Browning actually looks pretty competent, and the defense is still pretty good, and they scheme things up very well on the defensive side of the ball. They probably would be my third team, but you're right. It is like a garbage can just flying down.
That team's losing in the first round anyway, so it really doesn't matter.
I would go Houston, Cincinnati, Buffalo. Those would be my 3.
Houston over Cleveland?
I just want to see CJ Stroud, man.
But if they would have had Tank Dell, I would have been all aboard that train. But
I know.
now Nico Collins is still hurt. Like, I don't want to see CJ Stroud throw to
And
Noah
he's hurt
Brown.
too. He's got the concussion,
Yeah.
so I don't think they're getting in. If I had to guess on who, like, that's
gonna
who
be
we
the
want
freaking
to see.
Colts.
Who I think will actually get in, dude. I have no idea.
I think it's the Colts, Bills, and Browns. I think those are the teams that are going to get in.
That feels right.
God, I don't want to see the Colts in the playoffs.
I haven't looked at the Colts' schedule down the stretch. Pittsburgh, Atlanta, Vegas, and Houston. Whew.
Yeah, you're winning all of those.
Houston has the Titans twice, Cleveland once, and Indy. That Indy game probably is for a playoff spot. Houston versus Indy, the final week of the season.
Oh, that's probably our Sunday night game.
Yep.
What a terrible
Yeah, because
game.
nobody else will determine their fate. It'll just be the 2 of them playing against each other.
Meanwhile,
head-to-head.
the entire-
Browns have Chicago, Houston, the Jets, and the Bengals. Bengals-Browns could be for a playoff spot as well.
Meanwhile, the NFC just sitting back and laughing at all of these players. I mean, like, yeah, okay, see you in the Super Bowl.
The 49ers, Cowboys, and if you want to throw them in there, Eagles are in a really good spot right now. All right, final thing here. We're through 13 games of the season for every team in the NFL. You guys got an MVP that you've settled on at this point?
Mine would
Do you
still
have one person that you think has been the clear-cut MVP of the league?
Mine's Dak. I don't think there's anybody been better than Dak, and I know the Brock Purdy argument, but I stand by what I say. I think he's got way more weapons to make himself look great compared to what Dak does. And CeeDee Lamb's been on a tear, but Brandon Cooks has been great. Michael Gallup has been great. They've been using a backup running back, and his offensive line has been in shambles all season. Dak's my MVP.
I mean, I would probably vote for Tyreek Hill, but I know it's a quarterback award. I would probably go with Dak as well. I just think Purdy's too much of, and I think it's going to hurt him in voting. I think he's too much of a system quarterback. And I think you saw that during that 3-game losing streak
been
when they were missing
so
their
good,
pieces. I get it, but I just think he's more like Dak. Who's his second best wide receiver?
Brandon Cooks.
Okay? Like,
Well, we didn't do
started
this.
fine.
We didn't do this for Mahomes when he had Tyreek and Travis Kelce. He won the MVP.
True,
He was
but
deserving of it.
There's even better weapons in San Francisco.
And were there people behind Patrick Mahomes that had a chance? Because that's the other part. Like, Patrick Mahomes, even with those weapons, was clear-cut better than everybody else.
Yeah.
Dak and Brock, if they're tied with their competition, I give the slight edge to Dak Prescott.
I agree with you guys. I would also give it. I mean, I agree with T-Bone, actually. I would give it to Tyreek Hill. I think we saw last night when Tyreek was out of the game. That Dolphins offense is not very good without him out there.
If Tyreek Hill gets it, can CeeDee Lamb be in that conversation? Because teams are double covering this guy, and he's still finding ways to score touchdowns.
Yeah, he's been really good. Tyreek is putting up historically great numbers. Tyreek Hill might have the best season I've ever seen by a wide receiver.
He was on pace.
300 yards ahead of CeeDee Lamb. So, no, I couldn't put CeeDee Lamb.
He was on pace. I don't know how this was affected after last night. He was on pace to beat Calvin Johnson's single season.
He's now on pace
record
for 2,000 yards, almost exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would put him as the MVP, but if you're not going to give it to a non-quarterback, I would go Dak Prescott as of today. Hey, join Chris Kerber in 101 ESPN this Sunday at the new Chicken and Pickle. I'll be right by me, my neck of the woods, out in St. Charles. Sunday is the first pickleball tournament ever at the new Chicken and Pickle location, and it's an ugly sweater tournament. Plus, plenty more happening at their new facility, which includes 11 pickleball courts, a game yard. Wow, game yard. A rooftop bar and much more. You can check it all. I thought it said a gnome yard. I was like, wait, T-Bone's going? You can check it all out this Sunday with Chris Kerber, who will be at Chicken and Pickle from 11 to 1 out in St. Charles. More info available at 101ESPN.com. Can't confirm it is not a gnome yard. T-Bone will not be there, but Chris Kerber certainly will.
Could you imagine a gnome in an ugly sweater? Oh, T-Bone, you should capitalize on that.
Next week?
You going to wear an ugly sweater next week, man?
I hate you guys.
Coming up next, the BK and Ferrario Rewind here on 101 ESPN.
Robert Thomas, you're my favorite pro.
Thanks, kid. What's your name?
Sam.
Sam, here's an autograph for you. You know, I might be a hockey pro, but he's a pro too.
That's just my dad.
Just dad to you. But to everyone else, I'm the Auto Loan Pro, helping people finance their cars the right way.
Leave it to the pro. AutoLoanPro.com.
Download the free playbook and get started today.
AutoLoanPro.com.
Hey guys, this holiday, floor your family with a gift from Ambassador Midwest Floor. Buy a gift card for $500 or more and get an extra 10% bonus. They'll even gift wrap a digital photo frame filled with flooring ideas as your gift. Install it yourself or let their master craftsman do the work for you. Buy a gift card for $500 or more and get a 10% bonus. Shop online. Details at ambassadorfloor.com. Floor your family and experience more at Ambassador Midwest Floor.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. If you missed anything from today's show, be sure to check out the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
If you were listening earlier, you know we had an opportunity for you to win a couple of tickets to see the Blues versus the Stars this weekend. You will continue to have those each of the next couple of days, both here on BK and Ferrario and the other shows throughout the week. Jack and Fitton won the Blues tickets earlier today.
And speaking of Jack in the Box dropped some food off for us, guys, and they're selling $2 air fresheners to benefit Shriners Children's Hospital.
Hell yeah, brother.
All the way till December 31st. So if you know one thing I love, it's helping out Shriners Children's Hospital.
In all seriousness, really good cause.
Yeah.
Awesome thing that they're doing. $2 is all.
$2 air freshener till December 31st, and then you get those sourdough jacks.
What's your go-to at Jack in the Box?
So it's the tacos and then the sourdough jacks.
I'm just taco guy.
That's
just
what I am.
Exclusively go there, just get the tacos.
Is it weird too that I only eat ranch dressing from Jack in the Box?
It's not weird
because it's their buttermilk ranch dressing. There is nobody that competes with their ranch
Jack
dressing.
in the Box at 2 a.m. on a random, Thursday night. Best thing.
I got through high school and college off of probably the reason I am who I am, thanks to Jack in the Box.
Wow. I don't know if I should say thanks or screw you.
Everybody is saying thanks for that one.
Alex, there is a little bit of news in the college football world. There is a certain segment of Mizzou fans that are certainly excited about this.
BK.
Caden Green is an offensive lineman from Kansas City. If you remember last year, there were two big-time offensive line recruits. Logan Reichert, who they took a dump truck to see. That was the one where it was Eli Drinkwitz with the dump truck outside. He went there to see him and then went over to Lee Summit North to see Caden Green, an offensive lineman from Oklahoma. Reichert is at Mizzou already.
Did he take the dump truck to...
Sure did. He drove it all the way to Columbia.
Here he comes.
The other one took its talents down to Oklahoma, where he was playing for the Sooners this past year. He is unbelievable, like legitimately NFL talent right now, today, as a true freshman. He has entered the transfer portal. He will be the #1 target for Mizzou, no question about it. I'm terrified that, Oregon is going to come in and get him because their coach is previously in Kansas City. He was a high school coach there. Mizzou needs this guy. This is not to the same level as Luther Burden, second tier. This would be every bit as big as getting Williams Nwaneri. That's how big of a get this could potentially be for Mizzou.
I'll say it again, and I say it all the time. Suck it, T-Bone.
Yeah, you love.
We keep our guys in state.
Getting him to come back to Mizzou would be absolutely incredible.
All right, tough guy.
Before we get out of here, we got to tell you, speaking of the holiday spirit, join in by helping out 101 ESPN supporting Operation Food Search throughout the month of December. We have partnered with STL Shirt Company to offer a special 101 ESPN online merch store this month. You've got t-shirts, hoodies, hats, so much more. We've even brought back some of your favorite designs, including the Dunctionary shirt, Be Patient shirts, and Jamie Rivers and BT jerseys. All of that is available to you over at 101ESPN.com. It's all helping out Operation Food Search. So do that today. It's all powered by McBride Homes. For Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Tonight, Blues versus the Red Wings. Pre-game with Alex starting at 5:30. Alex, you think the Blues get back on track in this one?
I do.
Pavel Buchnevich hat trick.
And then the third goal he scores,
bada bing.
he looks at a camera and he goes to BK, I'm the centerman now.
Yeah, I like it. I hope he does. I hope he wins 70% of his faceoffs, has a hat trick, maybe three assists on the power play.
I'm going to say this right now. If Booch scores and they win, I'm making the show open tomorrow.
We'll talk about that tomorrow. Find out if Alex is making a show open. Fast Lane's coming up next here on 101 ESPN.